Well, I'm really not at that other number because I was expecting you to call, on this number anyway.
Okay. I'm sorry.
You did the right thing.
Okay.
Why, did you call the other number?
Yeah, I did.
The other number?
I did, and I thought that I thought you were on it. So I was a little confused because I did some changes today. Anyway, let's get going. We got you. That's all that matters. I got a lot of stuff to talk to you about. We're not I'm going to be doing the show with you next week because I'm going to be heading down south again to do the fight, the Triple G-Lemieux fight. So I'll get your thoughts on that. But first, let's turn the clock back to this past weekend. We got treated to a couple of decent fights. First one I want to talk to you about is Adrian Broner. Adrian Broner. I know we kind of both felt the same way, or at least I think we did. That we knew that this kid, when he busted onto the scene, had a lot of talent, and then he kind of went down that nutcase road, and he lost a lot of favor with me and a lot of other fans. But worse than that, he just wasn't performing right. I mean, he just didn't look like the same guy. He kind of changed and shifted gears, and he took this last fight serious. He put a gag order on himself, didn't say a word, and when he got in that ring, he seemed very serious. He looked big. He looked strong. I was very impressed. Now, granted, he wasn't fighting a top guy, but I thought he looked very good. Before I move on with Broner, what was your thoughts? How do you felt he looked good, and what did you think? How did you feel he looked in the fight, and did you think that his new keeping his mouth shut for the pre-fight stuff was good or bad?
Well, I thought it was good. I thought that was good, but I mean, he's going to be his old self. I could still see signs of the old Adrian Broner, as far as his mouth goes. But I thought it was commendable the way he conducted himself. But getting to his performance, I thought it was a good performance. But it was, the opponent was really not an A-class opponent. But to me, there's still something missing from Broner. I don't know, maybe now that he's getting a little bit more serious about his craft, he's going to get better now because he realizes that he hasn't reached that point of perfection yet. So I was impressed with his performance. And if he could keep going, moving in that positive direction, I think that we might see the fighter that he thought he was, but hasn't gotten there yet. But I think that he's on the road to getting there. So I was very impressed with it, and I look to see some positive things from him. I thought it was a good performance, and I thought that it was very impressive. So I'm becoming a little bit of an Adrian Broner fan from that fight. So if he can stay on that positive path, I think both of us are going to be pleasantly surprised.
I first of all, I think that the weight class is perfect for him. He tried. He when he first busted on the scene, he was in the lightweight division and he was dominating. But obviously, I don't know if it was just because he was getting bigger or if maybe his dedication was a little bit. But he went all the way up to welterweight, and he didn't fare well. I like this weight class, junior welterweight. I think he hydrated well. He didn't seem to have any problem making weight. He looked big and strong in the ring. Here's what I think right now, and I'm curious to know what your thoughts are. I know that this kid has got the talent, and when I watched him as a lightweight, what I admired, and I was a big fan of his when he first came out, Larry, and the reason was because I saw this guy, I saw incredible hand speed, I saw a guy with some pop, I saw a guy with some accuracy, and I saw a guy that was willing to exchange. And then he decided to incorporate the Floyd Mayweather version of the shoulder roll, or at least Adrian Broner's version of Floyd Mayweather's shoulder roll. And what we have is what we see now. We have a guy that goes in. You got to beg him to throw punches. He's more safety first oriented, and et cetera, et cetera. Now, I'm not suggesting that fighters need to, endanger themselves, But, certain fighters can do certain things, and they're the only ones that can do it. Floyd was successful with the shoulder roll because of his whole package. I think that Broner should utilize his hand speed and his willingness to exchange. I think he's leaving a lot of stuff on the table by hiding behind that shoulder roll, Larry, and I think that is the weak link. What do you think?
Well, that to me, rests with the trainer. If you got a decent trainer, the things that you analyze and the things that you see is what the trainer should see. And the trainer should be the one who should be able to help that fighter cultivate his strong points. And what you're saying is very true. Broner has always seemed to have that good hand speed, good movement, okay? And he shouldn't be trying to be someone else. He has to develop and improve on those strong points that he possesses naturally. And that's the trainer's job. The trainer's job is to help the fighter improve on his strong points, not try to make him someone else or have the fighter pattern himself after someone else. He has to capitalize on those things that makes him the best that he could be. And that's hand speed, movement, head movement, you understand? And a lot of those skills will make up for the power that he may not have. And it'll make him more successful. And it'll probably, you'll see more impressive wins and even more knockouts, against some of these opponents. So I have to agree with that. The shoulder roll and all of the stuff that Floyd Mayweather did, that was Floyd Mayweather, and Floyd had it to perfection. Broner is not Floyd Mayweather. So I think when Adrian Broner tries to be Adrian Broner more than trying to be Floyd Mayweather, we'll see, twice the fighter that we saw last week.
That was perfectly said, because I agree with you. And I think that some of the problem that these trainers, because, his trainer's not a bad trainer, but I think that they get caught up with this money and they become yes men, even guys that weren't yes men before, and I think they do what the fighter says. It's like football now. Years ago, teams used to be built around a coach. Now they spend $100 million for a player. If he doesn't get along with the coach who's making $100,000, guess who gets fired? It becomes a money issue. And I think that's what's happening in boxing too. When we look at the other main event over on HBO, man, did we see a good fight. I'm looking at Victor Postol against Lucas Matisse, and to be honest with you, I was wrong. I thought Matisse would win that fight. I'm watching that fight, and you popped into my mind. You know why? Because when I saw Victor Postol, all I could think of, and don't get me wrong, I'm not comparing him to him, but he certainly reminded me of him. Tommy Hearns. He has the same body. He kind of, the way when Tommy was young and he was like still growing in, where his upper body was kind of smaller than his legs and stuff, even though he had those chicken legs. Victor Postol looked like a version of Tommy Hearns. What did you think about the fight and Postol's performance?
Man, that was a methodical beatdown, man.
Yeah.
The way Postol, he was in total control. The way he maneuvered around the ring, the power, the movement. He actually, I gave him every round up until he finished Matisse. That was a methodical beatdown, and it was a tremendous fight. And, what can I say? Those are the type of fights that the fans deserve to see, and those are the type of fights, that really makes boxing the great sport that it is. And we're beginning to see some of the talent that's out there. Every time we think that, we've discovered the heir apparent, along comes another one. And these guys that are coming from, the foreign countries are really taking over boxing here in the United States, because they come with good, sound, basic skills. They punch well, they move, you're talking about ring generalship. You know, you saw the classic example of ring generalship, you know, when this guy Postol. And, you know, I expect to see more great things from that fighter. Outstanding fight.
You know, I hope to see a lot, but right off the bat, the political landscape of the sport of boxing, look at you, watch two fights that night on rival networks, and at the end of the night, you say to yourself, man, wouldn't Victor Postol against Adrian Broner at 140 be a great fight? But yet, they won't even consider each other because one is with the rival network, the other one's with the rival promoter. I mean, so these guys are talking about all these other fights that don't include them fighting each other. There's the big problem of the sport, because us as fans, we want to see the two best guys. If Broner is going to pound his chest and say he's one of the top guys in 140, and Victor Postol dismantles a guy who many believed was the top guy in 140, why can't we see those two guys fight each other? Because it's like it's that division issue again, Larry.
And then now, if you do a comparison, let's take that comparison a step further. Based on those two fights, I would have to lean with Postol now against Broner, because Postol's opponent, was a much tougher opponent, you know, and the skill set that you saw in Postol at this point in the game, as opposed to Broner, I think there was no comparison.
No, I agree.
In my opinion.
I agree. I think Victor Postol demonstrated that he knows. You know, a lot of fighters that have the ability or the natural ability, height, reach, and stuff like that, they don't necessarily know how to use it sometimes. You know what I mean? And sometimes if they get with the wrong trainer, the trainer doesn't know how to utilize it. You know, Victor Postol, and I'm not, you know, I know he just started working with Freddie Roach, and I don't want to not give Freddie credit, and I certainly don't want to give him credit, but I do believe that Postol knows how to take advantage of his advantages, you know, his height and reach, and I think it was pretty obvious on Saturday. I wanted to talk a little about the undercards, because you saw two different types of fights. On the undercard of the Broner Acaduro fight, we saw Jose Pedraza fight Edner Cherry, and Pedraza won a split decision. I thought the fight was close, but I got to tell you, you know, Edner Cherry, in my opinion, won that fight. I'm not saying it was a robbery, because I thought that the fight was extremely close. I scored it 116-112 for Edner Cherry, the way one of the judges did it. The other two judges, 117-111. I didn't understand where that came from. And I will say this too, Larry, before I get your thoughts. Edner Cherry, who's been around a long time, but his problem has been he's not active. He started working with Dan Birmingham out of St. Pete in Florida, and I saw an immediate difference in Edner Cherry. He was fighting like I've never seen him fight before, and I don't know if I could really see that much of a change from one fight with the new trainer. What were your thoughts first on his performance, and second of all, did the judges get the score right?
Well, I know one judge that got it right, and his name was Larry Hazzard Jr.
Which one? Did he score it the way I did? I don't even know. Let me see. Which one was it?
Yeah, well, he was Cherry. He had it for Cherry.
Oh, so his score was the same as mine, 116-112. That's what I scored. Yeah.
And he had it 1 point different than the way I scored it at home. So I gave him a B+. Okay, but
he could come over for Sunday.
I thought Junior had it right.
You'll let him come over for Sunday dinner, right? Since he got it close.
Yeah, I'll let him come over and get some of the crumbs. Okay, but anyway, if you look at Birmingham, listen at the instructions. Okay, you know, I have to applaud Birmingham. Did you hear? He was a cheerleader, but he was an instructive cheerleader.
Yes.
Did you hear how he was instructing him?
Yep.
And how he was, you know, hyping them up, telling them how. You understand? See, that's the difference in just being a cheerleader and being an instructive cheerleader.
Right.
Okay. See, what a difference in what we normally see often with some of the trainers of lesser caliber, who they just become cheerleaders. and you sit there and you say, well, why don't you tell the kid what to do? I mean, we know you got to fight, man. You got to do this, mixed in with all of the profanity and everything else. I don't know if I heard Birmingham say one word, one profane. I did not hear him use profanity at all. But he was cheering this kid on, but he was giving him instructions. And the kid was following the instructions because, as you know, he started coming on. He started very slow. And then you could see him gradually taking control of the fight. And I thought that it was a close fight, but it was no doubt in my mind that Cherry had won the fight.
Yeah.
So, I have to give all the plaudits to Birmingham for what he did. I mean, I have to give him a lot of credit for the job that he did in the corner instructing Cherry. And I have no doubt, I thought that Cherry won the fight, even though it was close.
Yep.
I thought that he won. I won, without a doubt. He won that fight, in my opinion.
Yeah, I agree with you. And, the thing I liked about Dan's corner job that he did, his training work that he was doing with Cherry during that fight, was that you're right. He would give the instructions, and then his timing for the rah-rah was perfect. See, when the rah-rah men start the rah-rah as soon as the guy sits on the stool, they're rah-rahing him. For one solid minute, they got the pom-poms out and they're cheerleading him. Dan made sure that he got his points across, only one or two in between rounds. And then, the mental part where you could, when I'm listening to that rah-rah, see, I looked at it a little differently than rah-rah. I looked at it like, this is a guy that spent a lot of time with Edna Cherry. He knew what Edna Cherry was thinking. He knew what he was performing, and it just, the hands-on. I love the hands-on trainers, Larry, and I think it's becoming pretty obvious who the hands-on trainers are and who the rent-a trainers are. The guy who shows up for the fight. The guy who has the corner jacket and he's ready to, like we talk about. He's the chief second, but he doesn't even know the kid's name. So anyway, I got a couple other things I want to ask you real quick before I just want to ask you one thing real fast on the other undercard. Antonio Orozco fought Humberto Soto, and as much as I like Humberto Soto, and I've always admired him, I give a lot of credit to Orozco in that fight because he was smart. The normal thing he was being coaxed into was a brawl by Humberto Soto, and Soto, that's his strength. And the kid, he obliged. He got into a brawl, but then he listened to his corner, too, and started utilizing his skill and turned out to win that fight. What was your quick thoughts on his performance over Soto?
Well, I think what he did, he wouldn't allow himself to get into the brawl, and he stayed to more on the boxer's game, and that's what pulled it out for him. It was an exciting fight, and both of those guys, they gave a very good effort. And I thought that fight, was a toss-up too, depending upon the styles that you like in the fighters. But I thought Orozco, he got my nod because he was more of the ring general. I think that he showed a greater level of skill in terms of movement, head movement, and I thought he just outpointed him. But I thought that was an exciting fight, and then I saw great talent there. In both fighters. I thought they both did a fine job in that fight. Yeah,
I think Orozco, his youth prevailed because he still had some gas in the tank, and I could think that, to me, I thought Soto, after the 6th round, started kind of running low on fuel, and the youth prevailed like it always will, So that's why Mark Twain said, "Too bad youth is wasted on the young," and he's right. But the big fight this coming next weekend, Triple G against David Lemieux. I know we've talked about it a lot. A couple of things have transpired around Triple G over the last couple of weeks, and one, I don't understand why it seems the media is not, and I am blaming it on the media, because everyone I talk to that's either a fan, a diehard fan like us, or even a casual fan that just, sticks their nose around for the big fights, they're all talking about this fight. Madison Square Garden is sold out. Everybody's interested in this fight. I think that if this fight lives up to the billing, it's going to help the sport big time. And now we see Triple G, the only guy that really was involved with corporate sponsors was Pacquiao, Hewlett-Packard and some pistachio company. Now all of a sudden we're seeing Apple with the iWatch product with Triple G on TV now. I think it's really good. What's your final thoughts of, number one, the fight itself and why it seems to not be getting the press that the media should be giving it? The fans are covering it. I mean, they're going to be there. And do you think that, what's your thoughts on the fight itself? How do you think it's going to go?
Well, you know my feelings on Triple G. I think he's really the heir apparent between him and Kovalev. And I think it's going to be an exciting fight, and I believe if it has all of the potential of being the fight of the year or a very memorable fight if both of these guys come out and fight the way that we know that they can, especially Triple G. And I think that this is going to be the first real test that everybody's been waiting to see from Triple G, and I have no doubt in my mind that he's going to come, that, he's going to do well. I believe that the reason they're not getting the type of billing that some of the other fighters get is mainly because, they're not American fighters, and they may not really be as well known yet as some of the American-bred fighters. But I think in time you'll see a change in that attitude, because these fighters, these European fighters coming over here, they're really beginning to monopolize the fight game, and their names are becoming more and more familiar with the American fight fans. And I think in a very short period of time, you're going to see that whole picture change. But I think that's going to be a very, very exciting fight. And it's going to probably be as the fight of the year. It certainly has the potential of being the fight of the year. So we'll see come Saturday.
I just, I wonder why it's not getting some of the hype that it should. As far as the fan base is concerned, the hype is there. Everybody's talking about it. It's just not making it to, you're not seeing that many articles being written. At least I'm not. You see the normal interview here and there, but you're not hearing all the. I mean, geez, and I'm not suggesting that he draws like a Pacquiao or a Mayweather, but Mayweather or Pacquiao announce that they're going to fight, and next thing you know, everybody and their brother is writing an article. Oh, Floyd used a different kind of toilet paper today, and all of this stuff, and you're not hearing nothing on this, and I think that the numbers are going to shock people. I think that the pay-per-view numbers are going to be really good, Larry. I'm predicting 500,000. Even Golden Boy thought that they would be happy if they got 300,000, and I think they're going to far exceed that. What do you think off the top of your head?
Well, I really don't know about this fight, and I think a lot of the hype for some that the lack of the hype is the fighters themselves. Floyd with his flamboyant personality, and some, Pacquiao, he seemed to just caught the imagination of the American press and the American people. I think that makes a difference there, and it goes a long way towards the pay-per-view sales. But I do believe that if these guys fight the way that you and I know that they can, and hopefully will, that whole situation is going to change very quickly. So, I think that's probably the main reason why it's not receiving the hype that, you and I think that it should receive.
Well, once the fight lives up to half of what we expect, we're going to see a change of the guard, I think.
Because we're going to see a change.
Yeah, yes. Because I think that if this fight, and I've been saying this for the last several weeks, if this fight lives up to the billing, I think it's going to catapult the interest in boxing, because these are the types of fighters. You could love the styles of a Floyd Mayweather all you want, but when push comes to shove, these are the kinds of fighters and the style of fights that attract people to get back into those arenas and watch it. And I'm convinced that these guys are going to help it. One last thing I wanted to talk to you about and get your thoughts. I know it's not officially official yet, but a lot of sources are confirming that indeed we're going to see a Shawn Porter against Keith Thurman fight on Showtime to close out the year, December 12th. I love the fight, Larry. I love it. It's it's a throwback fight. It's two young fighters facing each other. I almost believe that because some of the ratings are slipping, that they had to pull this card out now and put these guys against each other. What do you think about the reasoning of the fight and, of course, the fight itself?
Well, I think it's going to be an exciting fight if it takes place. And like you said, it's just, I think that the timing for this fight is now. Based on the performance of the last performance of both of these fighters, I think that they just see that the timing is right for them now to meet. Because if Porter loses, either one of these guys loses, I think that, then that fight's going to go out the window. So right now, based on their last performances, I think that's what makes this matchup, very attractive for right now. So they have to go ahead and get this going while it's getting as good, so to speak. So I think that's the reason for it. And I think that it's going to be an exciting fight.
I think
Porter's a tough kid.
I think that it's going to go deeper. I think that what maybe could be happening, and I'm keeping my fingers crossed, and maybe, I hope it's just not me wishful thinking, Larry, but I'm hoping that it's almost like an educational process, this fight. This fight has taken two young fighters that we normally haven't seen fight each other. And the reasons, everybody says, oh, he's scared. We know that fighters aren't scared. But, the promoter might be scared. The network might not want to sign the guy because he's got a loss or something like this. This type of fight shows me that, these are two premier fighters. They're both young. They got a whole future, a whole career in front of them. And I don't think the loser, I don't think anybody, and I certainly hope no one does, because it certainly wouldn't be fair, but I don't think the loser should be tabbed as being overrated or exposed and go down the tubes. I think that this is good for the sport, that someone's going to walk out of there with a loss, because it goes to show you that just because you have a loss doesn't mean you're a bad fighter.
Well, you know my feelings about that, Billy. I've said that over and over and over, and I think that's the paradigm that I'd like to see happen in the sport. For the mindset to change, and so for these fighters to understand that a loss, or even a few losses, is not the end of a career, because once again, I go back to the era of all of the great fighters. Most, if not all, of the great fighters of the past lost fights. You only have two fighters now in the history of the game that I can think of that had a career and were undefeated. That's Rocky Marciano and now Floyd Mayweather. So you're talking about thousands of fighters, over time in boxing, great fighters who were even greater than those two who are undefeated, you understand, were great fighters. And this is the understanding that fighters have, or the mindset that fighters have to, begin to get, is that, if you got two good fighters, two great fighters fighting, somebody's got to lose. Somebody's got to win, somebody's got to lose.
Right.
But because you lose a fight does not mean that you're a bum now. Okay? There could still be some great fights ahead for you. And this is what fighters have to understand. So I agree with that, what you're saying 100%.
Yeah, no, I agree with you. And it's funny, that record. I remember you saying to me, "Now, what is this record, man? What is it? Retiring undefeated?" Because that's all it really is. 49-0, and they walk away because Julio Cesar Chavez. What did he win? 80 fights before he lost one. I mean, Sugar Ray Robinson won 60-something.
Over 100 fights.
Yeah,
but fights before he lost his first one.
Yeah, so I mean, you got all these fighters that have fought all these fights way past 49, and the only difference is they didn't retire, So, but anyway, hey, it's something to. It's definitely one of those records. It's set, and it's tied right now. But anyway, Larry, I appreciate your thoughts, my man, and enjoy the fight on next week. And we'll be talking to you in 2 Thursdays from now. Not this week coming up, but the following one. So we'll talk about that fight.
Okay.
And you got any big stuff happening in Jersey, man? You got any stuff you want to talk about real quick?
Well, not, we got some PBC stuff. I don't know who the main events are yet, but probably by the next show I'll be able to tell you what's really on the agenda. So we got some stuff coming up.
Sounds good, man. They're busy, closing out the year, moving forward. So we're looking forward to all that stuff, my man.
Okay.
All right. Have a good one, and we'll be talking to you in a couple of weeks.
Okay, Billy. Look forward to it.
All right, Larry. Take care.
Okay.
That's my man, Larry Hazzard, the boxing commissioner in New Jersey, and, of course, a International Boxing Hall of Famer, giving us his thoughts on all that stuff, the fights from last week, and, of course, his thoughts on the Triple G-Lemieux fight. But more importantly, like we're always talking about, that Shawn Porter-Keith Thurman fight has a lot more going on than just two young fighters going against each other. And like Larry says, some fighters, even the best fighters, after a loss, they get better. I'm not suggesting that a fighter should want to lose because, I'm not suggesting that at all. But I think if young fighters are allowed to compete and fight the tough fights, that they'll only get better. And a really good example of that was Julius Jackson's ass whooping the other night. We'll be back in 2.